Welcome to Series 5 of the Lawyers Coach podcast. My name is Oliver Hansard, and each episode of this podcast will feature myself or Claire Rayson, both of us coaches and former lawyers, trying to find out what makes lawyers tick. In this series, we will be hearing from various guests and experts, exploring the skills that lawyers need to succeed. And then, at the end of each episode, we will both be reflecting on what they said. The Lawyers Coach podcast is brought to you by Client Talk and Hansard Coaching. In this episode, Claire Rayson talks to Mary Bonsor, CEO of Flex Legal. Claire talks to Mary about how she moved from identifying a problem to launching Flex Legal.
Maybe we could start with the question that we ask all of our guests for our podcast, which is, why did you choose to be a lawyer?
Of course. So probably quite similar to a few lawyers out there. I sort of fell into law at the end of university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I liked the idea of helping people, problem solving and continuing to learn. So law felt like a good next step to kind of tick off those three things. And then did my GDL, really enjoyed it, got a training contract that summer, did my LPC, and the rest is history.
And you started off, you had quite kind of, I guess, a traditional route into law. You did your training contract, you then qualified at the firm and carried on practicing. But you then sort of jumped ship and started your own company. So can you tell me a little bit about what was behind that?
Of course. So similar to many law students out there, I struggled initially to get the first bit of work experience and found it a real chicken and egg. People saying you need experience to get experience, and how do you get that first step in the door? So there was a real problem I saw there. And then when I qualified, my firm was next to a law school, and I would constantly see students outside my window and think, I need help now. I can see them below me and I know they'd jump at an opportunity to get work experience. And now with so many apps and technology, where's the recruitment app in legal? So that's when I had the kind of light bulb moment and thought, this is what I should do, and I'm going to give it a go.
And it's quite, I mean, you say it like, you know, that it was easy. I'm sure it wasn't. You know, how did you make the decision to set up on your own, and you know, tell us a little bit about that kind of journey?
Yeah, so I think I made it sound far too easy then. It was quite a long process. I mulled it over for about 4 years and did it in a very typical risk adverse way. So I didn't have huge amounts of savings, so I knew I needed to raise money to if I wanted to go and do this. But initially I wanted to prove the concept, learn everything I could about it. So I did a lot of weekend research and evening research, and then I set up Flex on a spreadsheet by going and flyering outside a law school, getting 20 CVs of paralegals, putting them onto my spreadsheet, and then contacting one law firm and saying, look, I've got a great set of law students. When you need help, please give me a call. And so when I went and got my investment, I kind of proved the concept on a very, very basic level by being proactive and using a spreadsheet. So I then found it a bit easier to get investment. And as soon as I got the investment, I took the plunge and handed in my notice at my law firm.
And can you tell us a little bit about kind of the journey that Flex has been on from that kind of first spreadsheet and, you know, kind of the initial planning stages to where it's at now?
Yeah, it's felt like a lifetime. So we're 5.5 years old. So at around this time I got my investment, I met my co-founder, James, who's a technologist. And I always knew, you know, tech was a key part of it. From the very beginning, I wanted to invest everything in the technology. So having a co-founder for me who was technical was absolutely key. So met James, the two of us. There were actually initially 3 of us, which is another kind of story in itself, in that Jimmy from Legal Geek was one of our founders, but then Legal Geek started to grow at the same time and he couldn't manage to do both, so he went off and did Legal Geek, but very amicably, which was very lucky. But it really showed, you know, the importance of setting up a company and who you do it with from a very early stage. So I was lucky in that that was all amicable. So then James and I carried on the Flex journey, and have just slowly grown. Started off with just paralegals, building the platform, growing our team, and then 2 years ago started doing lawyers on a flexible basis too, and helping them move around. And now we're a team of 40, and we offer kind of flexible paralegals, lawyers, and our new scheme, which is flex trainees as well. So it's kind of developed as we've gone along.
I'm going to talk to you about flex trainees in a second, but one of the things I want to pick up is something that I picked up from your LinkedIn profile, which is where you say that one of the benefits of flex is that it allows people to try out different areas of law. So perhaps you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I think, when people say they want to be a lawyer, often it's from quite a limited level of experience. So, kind of looking at me as an example, I had one bit of experience in private client. So I thought I wanted to be an employment lawyer, but I never had the chance to get any experience in it. So I think for me, the more we can give law students a bit of exposure to different areas of law, the more they will have experience and understand where they want to qualify. And in particular, in-house, I really feel that when you go to law fairs and university fairs, you see all the top law firms, but you never see in-house teams because they don't have the funds to represent someone at those careers. So allowing people to see what it's like to work in-house and have a bit of exposure there is so important, I think, for their future careers.
And you mentioned the flex trainees, and that's what I want to come on to now, because I know that you've just started quite an exciting program, which is trying to diversify the profession. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so similarly to the point I just said, actually, so the way to qualify has changed, or is in the process of changing, which I'm sure you know about with the SQE coming into force in November. And why I get super excited about this is it allows people's paralegal work to count towards qualification if it can be signed off. So that really means that a lot of paralegals who work in-house can begin to use it to count towards their qualification and qualify via the SQE route. And I think for businesses, that's fantastic because they can begin to retain and grow their own talent. So the amount of general counsel we speak to who say, I had this fantastic paralegal, had all this knowledge, and then sadly they had to go and do their training contract to qualify. And now that won't happen. So Flex Trainee is our flex program to help paralegals qualify via the in-house route and help businesses manage that qualification route and grow and retain their own talent.
This series is about kind of skills that lawyers need. And you're in quite an interesting position, I guess, at Flex, because you're seeing the people that are coming through and out of law school and helping them along on their journey. What skills are you focusing on with your trainees, with your paralegals?
I think that a lot of the soft skills go a lot further now. So, because of the internet and PLC and Westlaw, you can find the technical knowledge for most legal questions if you know where to research. So for me, the softer skills become even more important. And what I mean by that is enthusiasm, proactiveness, curiosity, willingness to muck in, and all those skills, I think, in particular in small in-house teams, are absolutely vital to succeed. So with our first cohort, the feedback we've got is, they're the most curious, enthusiastic, positive bunch of people, and it's going really well because of that. They want to learn, so they're very easy to teach. So for me, those soft skills are really important. And then other skills such as Excel spreadsheet or presentation skills, or again, not your kind of legal technical skills, but the kind of the other skills on the peripheral, which also I think set you aside. So an example with that is, how we placed a paralegal into Diageo who had loads of technical skills, and suddenly they came up with a new bit of software to make their team super efficient. And that is what I love, is when you find people like that who can really make a difference in small teams.
And are they skills that you perhaps seek out when you're onboarding people, or are they skills that for you are things that can be learned and taught, and provided the focus is there, they're things that can be developed?
I think a bit of both. I think naturally some of those skills come more naturally to people than others, but I definitely think they can be learned. And if I look at the skills I've learned over the past 15 years, it's huge, and you just need a bit of direction and someone to give you really good feedback. I think feedback is a gift, and how you receive it, even if it's not delivered in the best way, which I'm sure we've all had situations like that, trying to take the positives out of that feedback and think, actually, what can I learn from that, and how can I improve and move, that will help you kind of have a more successful career.
And you mentioned soft skills, and actually I think it's all kind of tied together, because I know the O-shaped lawyer has been, really focusing on soft skills, and it's, for want of a better word, we'll keep calling them soft skills until we can find it. But but how important they are to in-house counsel. Is that kind of, are you seeing that echoed by the clients that you're working with?
Absolutely. For me, when often one of the questions we ask is, what are you looking for in terms of character or personality traits? And it's always usually the same answer of team player, curious, enthusiasm, positivity, empathy. So I think they're so important across the board, and perhaps more so in-house when you are part of teams and making the commercial decisions and having to work with a wide range of people within the business, rather than in private practice. It's probably the same, but you're a bit more removed, and that you are just giving advice, and you have multiple clients rather than just one.
Do you think as a result that perhaps those skills are measured or valued differently in-house to perhaps in private practice?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, in private practice, and I know things are changing, but the largest measurement is still the billable hour. So whereas in-house you don't have the billable hour, so I think there's more room for creativity, because you're not just looking at what you're spending your time on, you're looking at the value that you're delivering. I do, though, having said that, know that things are beginning to change in private practice, and I think that's fantastic. And I think things like pro bono work and people's other opportunities or things that they're giving the firm are really vital.
Obviously you've spent the last kind of period of your journey focusing on being a manager, of being a founder of a business, of running a business, and less on the practice of law. Obviously partners in private practice are also managers, but actually they spend their journey honing their legal skills, perhaps at the expense of some of those management skills. What would your advice be to those either partners now already or people on their journey who are going to be taking up management positions? What sorts of things should they be looking at and thinking about?
So I would say it's really hard to be a good manager and have a good day job. And actually, so many of us try and do both, but really making time to hone in on those management skills, because if you're a good manager and you have a good team, actually your management will become much easier. So getting to know your team, really understanding each individual and what makes them tick and what gives them energy and what their life is like at home. And I think that's so important for building trust and motivation, and then you'll get the best out of your team. So it's one of those things which you might not think is worth the time, because it potentially isn't the adding, the billable hour, you're not charging for it. But I think if you do management well, your team below will become so much better that then they'll be doing the billable time and you don't have to. So it's a bit paradoxical in a way, but it's I would just say always make the time to do good proper management. And when I mean that, I mean weekly one-to-ones to catch up, and maybe split that into two. One is focused on work and one is focused on people's careers, individual motivations, really getting to know them.
Linking back to something you said earlier about feedback, we've spoken before, and I know feedback is something that you believe in and are passionate about. Giving feedback, particularly where it's perhaps a little bit more critical, is something that I think lots of people struggle with. How have you got to a place where you're able to deliver honest feedback?
Yeah, so if I'm being totally honest, it's without a doubt one of the things I struggle with most. And unless you're a psychopath, you do not like giving bad feedback. So it's quite normal to struggle with it. So the first thing I do is I prep a lot and really know what I'm going in with and think about all the possible scenarios of how this could go. And I also, what I find easier, often they're dying to hear the feedback and they know it themselves. No one likes performing badly. So you're actually doing them a huge favour by addressing the issue. So my chairman of Flex, who's a great mentor, said always think of 3 of you in the room. There's you, there's the person you're giving the feedback to, and then there's the business. And you are doing this both with the business hat and your hat, but also for them. It's not fun doing a bad job and no one wants to. And if it's not the right role for them, you're actually really giving them you're doing them a huge favour by letting them go. But always do it with their best interests at heart. And if you generally believe you are, then you're doing the right thing. And I think that's a really nice way thing to remember.
And do you give feedback both on, again, thinking about the skills that we've been talking about, both the technical, but also on some of those softer skills?
It's not necessarily just technical, and it's being proactive and picking something up. It's being a good team player. It's going above and beyond your job title. It's, there's so many other great the acumens that people can show. And I think highlighting that and shouting about that is so important.
So, Mary, we have a range of listeners, and I'm sure that there will be a mixture of both businesses and also law students listening. So perhaps you can pick up again, going back to the trainee programme. What do both sides need to be thinking about?
Yeah, of course. So the kind of motivation of the trainee programme was to try and increase and improve social mobility within the profession. So we look for students from a social mobility background and have teamed up with the charity Strive to get our candidates from. We then train them up for 6 weeks on those soft skills and a few technical skills within Flex's HQ, and then we second them to our clients for year-long placements. At the end of those 2 years, businesses can hire them without any fee. So it's really trying to allow businesses to grow and retain their own talent. And we use their apprenticeship levy as well to pay for this. So it's actually an apprenticeship scheme, which is great because so many businesses don't use their apprenticeship levy, which is a real shame because it just gets taxed and goes to waste, especially legal teams. So if we can help legal teams use that for the purpose and benefit of growing and retaining talent, then I see it as a real win-win.
And so are they students that have already studied law and have already expressed an interest, or are they people that perhaps maybe never even thought that law was for them?
Yeah, so for now, we do students who have studied law at university or done their GDL that are willing to convert to the SQE route. Over time, I'd love to extend this programme to do school leavers and the 5-year apprenticeship scheme too. But we need to get this one going and working properly, and then we'll begin to expand into other age groups as well.
So far, what kind of feedback have you been getting from the businesses that have taken part?
Oh, it's been brilliant. So the feedback from the companies have been, so excited. The candidates are amazing. They're so positive. They're so hungry to learn, and they love being a part of it. And the feedback from the students has actually almost made me well up quite a few times, because it's thanking me for having faith in them when no one else has, and for really giving them a chance to succeed. And honestly, none of them need it. They're all super bright, smart people, but they've just got stuck in this bottleneck, and that's just a problem with the application process at the moment, which is why I'm just so excited by this new route to qualify.
I've got 2 questions. One is if companies are listening and thinking, gosh, this sounds great, I want to get involved, how do they go about doing that? Mm-hmm. And I guess the other question that springs to mind is, if you're a company that's listening that thinks, actually, is there something that we're doing that's causing this problem? What would you say to them in that regard?
Yeah, so first question, please get in touch with me. If you go to our website, flex.legal, there's either a button to say find out more about Flex Trainee, or my email address is on the website. So do drop me a line. And second question, again, please get in touch with me, because I think so a lot of clients who we speak to who are getting involved with this program have a paralegal in their team who they want to support, but they don't know how. And I think a lot of it is lack of knowledge at the moment around the SQE and way to qualify. So I'm very happy to speak to you, explain the process, explain what needs to be done, and help where I can, even if it's, you know, an hour conversation to set you on your way. That's not a problem. I think anything it's really interesting. From over the past 6 months, almost every in-house person I've spoken to, bar one or two, has no idea about the SQE. And it's just shows that there's a real lack of knowledge out there, and I really want to try and change that.
What do you think in-house teams need to know about the SQE?
So they need to know it exists, and also need to know their responsibility about signing off on a student's qualifying work experience. So I think lots of lawyers get very nervous about, and the word signing off, I think, is wrong. It's you're confirming someone has had the opportunity to gain a skill. You're not saying they've got the skill, you're saying they've had an opportunity to get the skill, which will then be tested in an exam. So the threshold is much lower than some people may think. And understanding a supervisor's position to sign off or confirm is really important for people's careers, because I think a lot of lawyers are worried about doing this, but I would say they shouldn't be if there's clear evidence that the work they're doing relates to one of the competencies in the solicitor statement.
And do you think in-house teams are more open to different routes to qualifications and perhaps private practice? I know we've been talking about kind of companies here, but
I don't actually think they are. I think law firms have really caught up with apprenticeships and SILEX and other routes. So I actually think often they have more resources to be able to do it, whereas in-house teams often don't have the budget or support to be able to do it, which is where I really want Flex to fit in, and to offer that support and kind of show them what good looks like, and be almost like an additional HR team to the legal team to help people qualify through these different routes.
I guess one of the things I've been thinking about, to kind of close the loop a little bit, I guess. So when we started chatting, you were talking about kind of bringing in someone who was very much a tech expert. You mentioned Jimmy as well, who obviously is kind of legal tech. And we've really been focusing on the people today and the skills that people need. What for you is the sweet spot between kind of the tech and the people side of things?
It's a very good question, and I think one which we are all trying to work out as the legal profession changes so much. I personally think that technology is never going to overtake the human element. You know, when you go to a lawyer, why do you go to a lawyer for advice? It's because you've built a good relationship with them and you trust them. A machine is never going to do that. They might be able to help the lawyer be more efficient, but I think that a machine can never build a good rapport and relationship with someone. So I don't think there's ever going to be a time when technology overtakes the human element, but I do think it will have a huge impact on efficiency and therefore cost, and potentially open up multiple different roles within the legal sector, which is beginning to happen already.
And do you think that there's, you know, a role there, perhaps at the paralegal level, the trainee level, to start to build in perhaps some of those legal tech skills as well?
So funny you should say that, because Flex Tech Trainee is hopefully launching in September with exactly that. You know, we've got a team of 12 technologists, and James, my co-founder, is very passionate about teaching people the tech skills. And I really see an opportunity to teach law students who want to be lawyers, but understand a lot better technology skills so that they can become better lawyers. So that's very much part of our kind of Flex expansion plans.
Exciting. And I agree. I think, the focus of all of our podcasts is always the people, but there's always an element of technology that ends up coming in. And yeah, that's fascinating to be marrying the two at kind of a junior level.
Definitely. Hopefully we'll see if it works, but we're going to definitely give it a go.
Fantastic. So you started off life as a practicing solicitor, you kind of jumped ship, and now you're very much focused on that practice of law, but as a manager. Do you miss practicing?
Yes, I do. But I suppose in many ways I've become an employment lawyer, in that there's always employment issues or terms and conditions I need to look at. So I still feel like I'm practicing my commercial lawyer skills and employment lawyer skills, which is something I didn't do when I was a litigator. But I do miss it. And I didn't fall out of love with the law. I really do love the profession and the intellectual stimulation. So I think I'm even more passionate about making sure people are happy and staying in the profession.
I mean, you, like so many of us, I think, that have started our own business, and other kind of business owners that I've spoken to, start because they see a problem and they can also see a solution to that problem. If there's anyone listening who perhaps is, sat as an in-house lawyer, or perhaps sat in private practice, and for some time they've seen a problem and that they know that they've got the solution to, what would your advice to them be?
I would say give it a go. There's no harm in trying things, and you don't need the shiny technology to prove it. You can prove a lot of things without the technology. So I would say give it a go, try and do it at a very low cost, low risk way. And if you can see any progress, and that's when you can go and really kind of go for it and see how far you can take it. Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I think that's a really lovely place to end the conversation. And I wish you every luck with the future, with the trainee program, with tech. Is it tech trainees? Thanks, and I'm sure other things that will pop up as well for the future.
Thank you so much, and so lovely to chat to you.
Love that conversation, Claire. What really stood out to you as you talked to Mary?
So for me, I think there were two things. The first was this idea about feedback and the power of feedback, and how we get comfortable giving feedback, which I think is something that Mary mentioned that, she still struggles with. It's certainly something that I think, thinking back over my career, I've struggled with. But that was one. And then the second thing, like this idea of management and leadership, and do we train our lawyers to be good leaders, or do we focus too much on the technical side?
So do you think lawyers in particular are frightened about giving feedback to their colleagues?
I don't know if it's just lawyers. I think feedback is something that, lots of us find difficult, particularly when we're talking about perhaps constructive feedback. I think one of the things we're going to be thinking about this series is soft skills, or I think success skills is perhaps a better way of calling them. But I think with those softer skills, it's sometimes tricky to give feedback. And I think it is interesting to think about how we can perhaps start doing that more often and normalizing that sort of feedback.
So maybe it needs to be in a gentler way, in a less formal way, maybe not so often during the appraisal rounds, just on an ad hoc basis. Maybe that's something that might help.
I think so. And I think that's something that perhaps, and again, whether this is just lawyers or something broader, but, I think, often we forget to say thank you as we're going along. And I think often we forget to give feedback as we're going along, but actually focusing on some of those, let's call them success skills, with our team across the year, I think is something that we should all be thinking about doing more often.
And then you mentioned management skills. I love the emphasis on really knowing your team and deliberately putting time into really understanding those that you work with, who report to you. I thought that was a really good tip.
Yeah, and I think, something that you and I have spoken about before, but I think, often in law firms, to get to the heady heights of partner, you've had to focus on the technical. You've perhaps been very good at working with clients, or one would hope that you've been good at working with clients. But the side around management is not something that I think is developed in lawyers as they move through their career. And when you become partner, you inherit a team. You have to sometimes manage a department, manage a practice group. And I think that management side is something that is something that people often are expected to just fall into the role and know how to do. But actually being a good leader rather than actually a manager is something that I think does take time, it does take focus, and something that, you know, perhaps firms should be thinking about earlier on in lawyers' careers.
And that's something that Mary really calls out, is it really is worth the time to learn those skills and really make the most out of the people that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Claire. That was terrific. In the next episode, I'm speaking to Rhea Blakely Glover. She's head of business development at Bird & Bird. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to our podcast in all the usual places. Goodbye.
Lawyers Coach is brought to you by Client Talk and Hansard Coaching. If you're enjoying this series, please rate us on your podcast provider so that others can find us. If you're a lawyer and would like to take part in Lawyers Coach, please visit our website lawyercoach.co.uk for further details. And you can also join the conversation on our LinkedIn group Lawyers Coach. If there are any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, then just get in touch.